The Houston Rockets are totally unique in the NBA because they really don't play with a center at all. They call it small ball. On Friday night, the Rockets only put 8 dudes in the game, period, the entire night. They literally had a 3-man bench, and the tallest guy that the Rockets put on the court against the Dallas Mavericks was 6'8". They did not have a guy over 7 feet, no center, and that's what they do. That's what the Rockets are known for. And the average height on the court for the Rockets in that game the average was just above 6'5". And because the Rockets play their small size and the fact that they have so many guards on the court at one point, the Rockets spread out along the perimeter on offense. And it creates a ton of isolation opportunities. It really makes it easier for guys like James Harden and Russell Westbrook to get into one-on-one situations. On small ball, they spread out along the perimeter, and the spacing gives guys like James Harden isolation all the time. And if you play help defense, okay, let's say James Harden takes advantage of isolation, he drives to the bucket, and you play help defense. You leave your man to go help guard James Harden driving in the lane. It leaves a guy wide open for 3. And so really what it does is make it so the defense cannot win. Whatever the defense does, it's wrong. And it's unique. Only the Rockets do it. It's really fun to watch. And in a one-on-one situation with James Harden, so often he'll blow right past people for an easy bucket inside. And the same thing goes for Russell Westbrook. Both James Harden and Russell Westbrook work this way. It's really fun to watch. And another thing is that teams that play the Rockets often get into foul trouble because of the way James Harden is so good at drawing fouls. Sometimes the only way to stop James Harden is, in fact, to foul him. He's so good at contorting his body and finding a way to get the ball into the basket. If you foul him, that might be the only way you're going to stop him from scoring. And so because of that, James Harden pretty much always gets his team into the bonus, meaning that every foul, whether it's a shooting foul or not, becomes free throw attempts near the end of a game. And James scores so many points off of free throws. I mean, a great example of this was, in fact, Friday night, where against Dallas, he had 49 points, and 18 of the 49 points he scored on Friday were from free throws. James Harden had 39, Russell Westbrook had 31. And here's ultimately why the Rockets' small ball does, in fact, work. Not only do James Harden and Russell Westbrook score, no, the Rockets had 7 guys with double digits on Friday. Now, I know the game went into overtime, but that's really only 5 extra minutes in the game. Daniel House was hitting threes. He had 6 3-pointers, which is ridiculous. Ben McLemore had 4, 13 total points, 4 3-pointers. And all 3 guys who came off the bench for the Rockets, Jeff Green, Ben McLemore, Austin Rivers, all 3 of those guys, the entire Rockets bench had double-digit scoring on Friday. And the Rockets also had all 5 starters with 40 minutes or more. Now, here's how the one way that small ball does, in fact, hurt the Rockets is on defense. So the Dallas Mavericks and the Houston Rockets played on Friday. And the Mavericks have Kristaps Porzingis, a guy who's 7'3". And he had 39 points against the Rockets, all 7'3" of him. And because the Rockets lack height, and because of Kristaps' size differential, I mean, the Rockets literally do not have anyone tall enough to contest Kristaps Porzingis' shots. They just don't have a guy who can do it. And he had 39 points, and yet the Rockets didn't even care. They're like, okay, so what? Because part of what makes the Rockets so unique is not only their perimeter, their spacing and the small ball, but is that the Rockets' defense is their offense. They're like a college football team. And it reminds me of Chip Kelly with the Oregon Ducks years ago, where the Rockets are like, yeah, we can't stop you. So what we're going to do is we're just going to score more points than you can. It's absurd, and more often than not, it works, which is ridiculous. I mean, this game, Dallas-Houston, it was a track meet. The score at halftime was 85-75. I mean, that's ridiculous. On June 8, 2005, was NBA Finals Game 1, where the Spurs beat the Pistons. Guess what the score was? So Friday at halftime, Dallas versus Houston, the score was 85-75 at halftime. In the NBA Finals Game 1 in 2005, the Spurs beat the Pistons 84-69. Yeah, there were more points scored at halftime in the game on Friday than there was in the NBA Finals Game 1 in 2005. That's ridiculous. The entire game versus one half. And that's, I mean, the Rockets-Mavs game was void of defense, just completely. And by the way, Russell Westbrook is a blast to watch. I really forgot how much I enjoy watching him. He's relentless, his effort, his intensity. Now, Dallas. I want to talk about Dallas because I need to mention Kristaps Porzingis. I want to talk about him. You know, the Latvian, right? He's 7'3" tall and a rare 7'3" shooter. A guy who, man, he just fascinates me because Kristaps does not move as well as a guy like Giannis, a guy who's 6'11". And, you know, Giannis is a freak, the way he can move and his athletic ability. Kristaps is a lot more stiff, but he's, like I said, he's a shooter, which is rare for a guy of that stature. And it is also interesting, he's a lot leaner than he once was. If you go back and look at like his Instagram or go see pictures of him a little while ago, he used to be a lot more bulky. And behind the scenes, I guess there's been a lot of conversations with Kristaps and the Mavericks training staff, and they came to somewhat of a compromise where Kristaps says, look, I feel more comfortable at a lighter weight. I'm a little bit thinner, a little more trimmed down. I feel more comfortable shooting when I have, you know, my shoulders aren't as bulky. Weird, unique. Again, he's not a center. He's 7'3", and he's really not. He's not. It doesn't play like most guys that would be 7'3". He's very finesse. But even though he hits threes and has a great jumper, he still does have some inside moves, almost like a center. He's like a weird, just a finesse player. And because he's unique, I find Kristaps really, really fun to watch. Just, oh man, it's awesome. And what's cool too is this year he's grown a lot more comfortable and he's now more vocal than I've ever seen Kristaps Porzingis in the past. When you compare Kristaps now to what he was years ago, you know, a little while ago with the New York Knicks, it's just not the same. And the way this Mavericks team has come together is crazy to me. Think about the way this team was assembled. Their two biggest stars, Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, both of them were acquired through trades, which is like, how did anybody ever part ways with these two really great players? Kristaps, I get, you know, he had injury issues and it just didn't quite work in New York. But what's more amazing to me is that Luka Doncic was once drafted by the Atlanta Hawks and they traded him away for Trae Young. And I like Trae Young. I'm a fan of him. I follow him on Instagram. And it seems like Trae Young is going to have a solid NBA career. But Luka is an MVP candidate. Luka is phenomenal. His stat lines are ridiculous. And I just go back to, it's crazy the way the Mavericks were put together, the way they were assembled through trades. They didn't draft these guys. You can kind of argue that the Mavericks did draft Luka, but they made a trade. It's all complicated and messy. But I just find it fascinating. And Luka's awesome, man. He's a bright young star. You know, on Friday night, he had 28 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists. He had a triple-double. He had a couple step-back threes where I just went, wow, that's beautiful. Some notable buckets and an and one I really liked. Now, the ending of this game Friday night was absurd. And it was one of those kind of a missed opportunity where you went, man, I really so badly wish we could have had a real crowd there. The game went to overtime. And if there'd been a real live crowd, if it was a normal non-coronavirus season where there's not a global pandemic, the crowd would have been so energized and fun at the end of this game, chanting and cheering and loud. And it's really the first time I've ever noticed, like, man, I wish there was a crowd here. Of all the NBA games I watched, this one was the one where I went, I really am feeling the impact of not having a crowd here, because this moment would feel so much more epic if there was people there chanting and yelling and hoping and hollering. And I got to say, it was interesting. The Mavericks had so many opportunities in this game to put it away. But the Mavs could not close at the end of this game. I mean, they had a 6-point lead with a minute left. 6 points, a minute left, and the Mavericks ended up losing in the end in overtime. And then what's crazier to me is with 5.2 seconds left, Dallas had a 2-point lead, and Steph Curry's little brother, older brother, I'm so sorry, I don't know. It's escaped my mind, I can't remember, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. Seth Curry's shooting free throws. He's got 2 of them. And if he makes both free throws, it's a 4-point game, and the Mavericks put the game away. But he only made the second free throw. It was so weird. It's like, well, Seth Curry, what? You're a great shooter, and it didn't go, how do you miss the first free throw? I have no idea. And it made it still remaining a 1-point game. And then later you had James Harden shooting foul shots. And, he was down 139 to 136. It was a controversial moment where he was catching and shooting, and he got fouled right before he started shooting, I guess, that's why you practice fouling. It's a weird thing you do at practice where you do work on very quickly getting on a guy and fouling him before he can get a shot off. Because, again, if you foul a guy while he's shooting, you get 3 points, 3 foul shots instead of 2 free throws. And so James Harden makes the first free throw. That makes the score 139 to 137. So the Rockets are down 2 points with like 3-point-something seconds left. And you're like, man, I don't know how in the world the Rockets are going to make this work. Well, James Harden misses a second free throw. I don't think it was intentional. I think he really was trying to make it. It rattles out. Robert Covington comes around from the right side of the hoop, flips around to the left, tips it in, tie ball game. Oh my gosh. Wow, it's a tie game with like 3 seconds left. Now, Luka Doncic had a chance to hit the game-winning three-pointer, and he missed. And so what I'm saying is that it just piled up. The opportunities that the Dallas Mavericks had to put this game away, that they squandered. A 6-point lead with a minute left. Seth Curry misses a free throw, and you're like, I could have been a 4-point lead. And then if you don't allow Robert Covington to tip the ball in, or if Luka Doncic can make a game winner, or later in overtime, there was the Mavericks had a 4-point lead in overtime. It's kind of insane to me. Dallas really could not come up with clutch points at the end of the game. I don't know if that's something they're going to grow into. Maybe as Luka gets older and as Kristaps becomes whatever he's going to become, if they maybe down the road develop a clutch factor, I don't know. But it is an issue that Dallas has had all year where in close games, they have not delivered clutch points in clutch moments. And because James Harden draws so many fouls, eventually at the end of the game, at the end of overtime, Luka Doncic actually fouled out. Totally no opportunity. And that's partially on Luka. You got to know the situation. You have 1 foul left to give before you're out of the game. You can't foul in that situation. And so unfortunately for the Mavericks, they are right now the 7th seed in the West. And meaning if things stay the same, then the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to play against the LA Clippers in the first round of the NBA playoffs. So I really look at it and go, man, the Mavericks got to win to move up in the standings so they can play a team like the Nuggets or the Jazz in round 1. But I got to say, man, I go back to this. If you didn't watch on Friday, I recorded it because I just have such a good time watching it. If you can and still are interested, go find a way to watch the Rockets versus the Mavericks. It was a great game. If you watch it, it was awesome. But at the end of everything, that is what we learned from the Rockets and the Mavericks game.